Oh, good, it worked this time. Welcome. Welcome, everybody, to the weekly Wednesday night live stream. I am your host, Dana Morningstar, and this is a live stream that I try and do every Wednesday night at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So if you are new here, welcome, and if you are returning here, welcome. I tried broadcasting live a second ago, and I was having issues with Zoom again, but it worked this time. So yay for that. Kamami is here, Jack is here, Maxine, Alicia, hello, welcome. Huffle Mom will be here shortly. Story time with Miss Marissa says hello, Jamie. Let's see, Alicia, did you get my email? I responded back to you about a few things. Kenneth, hello, welcome. Dave says, greetings from Liverpool, England. Hello, hello. UNA, Crystal Mountain. How has everybody's week been going? I feel like I looked extra short tonight, which I am extra short, but my setup, something's different about my setup. Can't. I don't know what's going on. Oh, okay. Alicia says, yeah, I was typing a response to you when I saw the time, and now I'm just tuning in here. Okay. Good deal, good deal. Well, thank you, Huffle Mom. She says, hi, Dana. You're looking relaxed and beautiful as always. I hope life is treating you well. Oh, it's very kind of you. I am doing better. I just took a bunch of ibuprofen. My neck has really been acting up. So maybe that's why I'm looking pretty relaxed. I'm feeling pretty good. Yeah, life is good. Life is good. It's been challenge. Everybody's got challenges right now with all this COVID stuff, but I'm just taking it a day at a time. Let's see. Kenneth asks, Dana, have you given any more thought to doing ASMR videos? I have, and I am open to considering that. I guess, did you have any specifics as far as ASMR? I know, a lot of them will have, there's such a range, I guess is what I'm trying to say. It's such a range of ASMR out there. There's people, what are they, popping bubbles, like little bubble packets, or there's people that are whispering, or there's people that do all kinds of things that are more sound based. Would you like something like that, or would you more of like a guided imagery type thing? Dave says, oh yes, Dana is looking beautiful and relaxed, but has a big black spot in front of her chin. Yes, I have my pop filter on, which I should have had on a long time ago. And yes, so, but it is awkward because, it's so big. I don't know. This might have a fleeting appearance on the show. So we'll see. Oh, Kenneth, really? Says, I did email you a few ideas. Was this to the Dear Dana at Thrive After Abuse email? Or was it Dana at Thrive After Abuse? I will check. I didn't see any emails from you, so I'll have to double check. Let's see. Completely random note. I got my hair cut. Yeah, what was it, yesterday? The day before? Day before yesterday. for the first time in way too long, like probably a good 6 months. And I had made an appointment before, and then the gal had canceled, and so then I had to wait till another one opened up. Anyways, finally got my hair cut, and I think that was part of my neck issue, because my hair, at least in the back, is really, really thick, and my hair was just getting so long. And I know I normally always wear it up, and you guys don't normally see how long my hair is, but it's long. It, not so much anymore, but it was down to my waist almost. So I got about a good 4 inches or so cut off and had her thin it out. And oh, I just about cried when I got out of that chair. I felt so good to not have all that weight pulling on my neck. I was, if this stylist was going to cancel, I was really tempted to just cut my hair myself. And because I was so uncomfortable, and especially when my hair was wet, it just was so heavy. So yay for the little things in life, like getting a haircut, right? Alicia says, I desperately need a haircut. I've been thinking about flipping my head upside down and just cutting straight across. Yeah, that was exactly where I was. So I hear ya. Oh, Kenneth says, I sent the email July 15th. Should I resend it? Yes, please. Because I was just in that inbox today and I didn't see anything. So, other than stuff I responded to. Fatima says, I have thick, long hair and would hate to cut and thin it out. Yes. And that's most people. And I don't know, you're young. So maybe I'm just getting old. My neck is weak. I don't know. I don't know what the issue is, but it's just too much. Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, lots of things going on here. Kenneth says Dana at thriveafterabuse.com. Is this the one? That's a good one. That one works as well. You will get an auto response that kind of kicks back, but I'll keep my eyes open for it. Let's see here. Salt String Music says, hi, Dana. Beyond my handle, my name is Rachel. Just wanted to tell you I adore you. Well, thank you. Thank you. That's very nice. Out of a 17-year narcissistic marriage for 15 months now, just found out I got the job of my dreams as a psychiatric office manager. Well, yay you. That's exciting. Congratulations on landing the job of your dreams. And it makes my heart smile twice to know that your dream job is the office manager of a psychiatric office, because that tends to be can be a very trying environment. So the fact that you are looking forward to that is just wonderful. That's the kind of, you're the kind of person that patients and clients need running an office that has to do with mental health. So, and everybody else working there too. Kevin says, I'm reading your book, Out of the Fog. It's very powerful. Well, thank you. Thank you. That means a lot to me, and I'm glad it could help. Oh, that's the other thing that's been going on in my life. I just published the ebook version, at least, of my latest book. It's a smaller book, but I'm experimenting with a different type of kind of format to make, there's just so much information about everything to do with narcissistic abuse. And so the goal was to to create a book that chunked it down. So we'll see how it goes. This is the first in a series. It's called Dear Dana, and it's a book on frequently asked questions about dating after narcissistic abuse. You can find the ebook on Amazon and pretty much anywhere where ebooks are sold. And paperback will be coming out, probably in the next 3 or 4 days. And then audiobook, I'm working on recording that now. So hopefully in the next 2 weeks or so, that'll be out. If you guys are interested in the audiobook, wait a bit on it. What I'm going to do is I'd like to also record another book I did on self-awareness questions. So, and Amazon at least has this program where I can bundle them. So you basically just get, if you're using your credits on Amazon, you basically just get a free audiobook that way. So that's something to think about. And of course, you can always get my paperback book, well, even ebook, paperback, or audiobook for free at the library. So something to consider. Okay, this pop filter is weirding me out. I think this might need to just go. So we're gonna do that. We're gonna do that and see if that works better. I feel like I can't see you guys and you guys can't see me. It's weird. Let's see. Oh, it's much better. Let me scroll up here. Carol says, my husband is on his way to hoover me back since I just filed for divorce on him after 6 years of his adultery. Oh my goodness. How was that for you? Finally filing for divorce? Were you struggling with mixed emotions, or were you at the point where you were just ready? And how are you feeling with his hoovering? Is there any kind of pull to kind of get sucked back into things, or are you able to stand firm? Okay. Wow. Carol says, I'm going to stand firm, although he is an effective manipulator. I've been married for 43 plus years. He is my one and only lifetime intimate partner. My goodness. Well, I think that takes a tremendous amount of courage and bravery and self-love to leave after 43 years in my hat's off to you. Hats off to you. The strength to do something like that is tremendous. And I really hope that this next chapter in your life is by far the best one yet. So it's amazing the difference when we get out of, and there's going to be pros and cons. There will be hard days, where there's kind of missing that comfort of another person being there, or the routine, or what have you. But I hope that you're able to have a decent support system around you, and to focus on having that peace in your life where you're not having to wonder, what is he doing? What's he up to? What's going on? That you're able to just set down all of that chaos and build a life that you deserve and that you love. Hey, E-Rock is here. Welcome, welcome. Halfway Mama saying, yeah, to Carol, wow, 43 years is a whole lot. I'm glad you're getting out. Okay, Alicia, I will read your email tomorrow and get back to you about that. And yeah, and Carol says, I just kept forgiving him because he kept promising. And I think that's the story of so many people. that go through these relationships with partners who have a real, I don't even want to say questionable moral compass, an absent moral compass, but they know all of the right things to say. And that it's so, I think it can just be so difficult to walk away thinking, well, what if this time is the time that they change? You know, but the reality is this is a long-standing pattern of behavior, and you know, if he hasn't changed, like how much damage has to occur, you know, in order for it to be enough. And I think you've passed that. So yeah, one of the things I encourage people to do when they're faced with a former partner hoovering is for them to write a list in like bullet point format of all of the reasons that you're wanting a divorce. Write it all down. And if you do start feeling, because nostalgia is a funny thing and our brain does funny things, it happens to all of us. When you start feeling those pulls of, oh, well, maybe, you know, maybe this time's different. Well, this time he's starting to go to church again, or this time he got into therapy, or what have you, to pull out that list and read it to yourself. And remember all of the other promises he made and all of the other lies and all of it. And realizing, you know what, it's just time. It's time for you to have peace in your life and everything that you're looking forward to in this next chapter of your life. So how is your support system? Well, that's good. I'm glad that your pastor even agrees he's insincere. Carol says, you wouldn't believe the manipulation because he knows I want to forgive and reconcile, but my pastor even agrees he's insincere. Yeah. And that's what they do. It's like a little kid who, you know, they get in trouble. And now all of a sudden it's sort of like, oh, geez, you know, well, geez, now that I'm in trouble, now that there's consequences, I'll do anything, I'll say anything, I'll promise you the whole world, as long as you get rid of those consequences. And it has nothing to do with, you know, them necessarily changing. It's they're just saying whatever they need to say in order to get whatever it is they want. And a lot of people like that are pathological liars and cheaters, especially when they're married, it tends to be they like having somebody cook and clean for them. They like having, two incomes. They like certain perks of being married, but they want to have their cake and eat it too, kind of a thing. And so, no, we read a book a while ago. It was it Necessary Endings? I want to say it was Necessary Endings. And the author in it, no, maybe it wasn't. I don't remember. Anyways, the author in the book was saying how there's a difference between like problematic behavior and or even personality disorder and character disturbance. And I really, really, really like how this author drew that line, because I agree completely. And when we're talking about a person has the inability to stay faithful, to be honest, to, like there's no working with that. There's no working with that. It's so, it's not an accident. It's not a mistake. It's not anything other than they don't care. And that lack of regard, that lack of empathy is deeply troubling. So I'm sorry that you're going through that. And Crystal Mountain saying, Carol, I'm right there with you. I just divorced after 31 years and I'm waiting to live separately. Just keep going. Yeah. I remember once I was working at a domestic violence shelter and a woman came in and she was, oh gosh, I don't know, in her 70s or 80s. And it was a similar situation, except she was terrified of her husband. They'd been married for, I don't even know, 30 something plus years. And one of her concerns was, she said, I'm too old to start over. And my response to her was, okay, but are you too old to have this continue? So there's two ways of looking at that. I understand. I mean, I think everybody understands. Like, that would be very difficult to start over. It's difficult at any age in life, but there comes a point where, like, man, I am just too old for this. This is ridiculous. I want to have peace in my life. I just, I'm tired. I'm tired of all the chaos and the anger and the stress and the frustration and the confusion and all of it. I'm glad that you are able to rely on your faith. It sounds like at a minimum you have a good relationship with your pastor. So that's good. And hopefully, is your pastor able to do some counseling with you? Carol says, I just kept forgiving him because he just kept promising. Yeah. And that's something that a lot of people struggle with, is they think, well, this is what it means. We have to forgive and forget, and nobody's perfect, and this kind of thing. But the reality is, forgiveness is more about releasing the anger that we have towards a person. If we're seeking to reconcile or repair a relationship, the only time that's really, I guess for lack of a better word, appropriate, is if the other person's done the work. So if there's two people in a relationship, one person does damage that harms the relationship, it's appropriate that there's consequences for that. It is not your job or anybody's job to try to reconcile or repair the relationship because it's not possible, because you're not the one that broke it. So a lot of people get confused with forgiveness and allowance of bad behavior. There's a huge difference. They're not even in the same zip code. And somehow over time, those two have become synonymous. And that's really unfortunate, because it's easy to get caught up in that, thinking that this is what forgiveness means, is I need to allow this hurtful person who's done damage to our relationship, I need to let them back in with open arms. And that's not what that's about. So it's reasonable and appropriate for us to have boundaries and to approach other people and their behavior with discernment. So yeah. And the forgiving part of him, the releasing anger, it's a process. It takes time. It takes years. And thankfully, you don't need to get a sincere apology from him. You don't need him to do or say anything. This is something that's between you and yourself, and that's it. And making the declaration that you are not going to let this destroy the rest of your life, and is a good start. So, okay, let me scroll up here. Okay, good. She says, thanks for letting me vent. It helps to stay firm and to get affirmation. Absolutely. You are welcome to vent here as much as you like. Lady, you got 43 years of things you kept bottled up. You take all the time, you can take the next 43 years and just let it all loose. Yeah. It's a lot. That's a lot to just to try to just quote unquote get over in life, and nobody just gets over it. The healing process comes from venting and being validated and being around people that understand. All right, Gareth is saying, yep, forgiveness doesn't mean forget. Amber says, 27-year marriage to a narcissist here, almost 2 years, and I'm still trying to divorce. I so want it to end. Oh, I can imagine. Is there any light at the end of the tunnel there? Do you know when things will be finalized? Kevin, well, you asked the perfect question at the perfect time. He says, I'm interested in what it is in us that causes us to allow the confusion stimulated by the overt narcissist to remain stuck within us. It's as if we need to realize childhood is over. They aren't loving. So, the book that we were supposed to be discussing for book club, which I apologize is going to be delayed again. We're going to end up, I guess, doing 3 book clubs in August. Oh my gosh, you guys, I am so sorry. The book club book that we're reading for July is called Attached. And I'm looking around for a paper copy of it, but I don't have one. I only have the audiobook. It's got 2 magnets in the shape of a heart on it. Anyways, fantastic book. It's all about attachment styles and kind of the pull that different attachment styles have and how to go about repairing them. It's a fantastic book. There's, like, anything else, there's a couple points that I have a little concern about. I haven't quite finished it yet. The author did start to address some of the points that I was a little concerned about. So we'll see where it goes. I'm a little over halfway through it, but he talks about that and about kind of that pull that we tend to have to that. Well, I should mainly say anxious attachment styles tend to have to avoidant ones, and how even securely attached people can get involved with anxious or avoidant, and there's a lot to unpack there. And part of that confusion, Kevin, has to do with self-esteem. Again, this stuff's not taught. So I really, really want to hammer that point home because it's not taught. It's so easy for any one of us to get knocked off balance, pulled off balance by toxic relationship of any kind, with a friend, a coworker, a significant other, you name it, parent, you name it. And this confusion, basically the self-doubt is what we're talking about, that not knowing, not being able to trust our own internal compass. That has a lot to do with having an external locus of control and having an external locus of evaluation, which happens. It happens especially if we grew up in a dysfunctional family, which a lot of people, I would say most people do, or the stuff's not taught. So that's everybody. So really, internal. So let's go over that. We have internal locus of control and we have external locus of control. Internal locus of the locus of control is where are we placing our ability, where are we placing our power, our ability to take action, basically. Is it coming from inside of us or is it coming from outside of us? If it's coming from inside of us, it's the ability, it's the feeling of, let me give you an example. I'm going to go to college and I'm going to choose my major. I'm going to major in what I want to study, right? External locus of control would be, My parents are going to decide what I study because they'll only pay for my college if I get an engineering degree. So there's no control. It's where are we placing that control? Is it within you or is it within somebody else? It's also even broader than that. It's events in life. Are we able, do we believe that we have the ability to affect change, or are events in life happening to us? Let's say realizing, thinking, oh, I attract narcissists. That would be external locus of control. It's somehow outside of our power, right? We're just, we just attract these people. Versus internal locus of control would say, I can't control who I can attract, but I can control how long I keep them in my life. Internal locus of evaluation versus external would be, external would be, let's say you go on a date and you tell 5 friends about it, and let's say they meet them. Let's say your friend meets your date. Your friends meet your date. Then let's say your friends all love this person. Oh, they're so wonderful, but you aren't so certain. You're like, I don't know. I don't have a good feeling about it. It's just something's off. External validation would be you're looking towards others to validate you before you make decisions. So it's, okay, well, my friends like this person, so I guess I'll keep going out with them. Or my friends don't like this person, so I guess I'll stop. Internal is, well, that's interesting that all 5 of you really liked this person, but you know what? There were a few other things there that were major red flags, and that's a deal breaker. So external is needing kind of that approval, that validation from others. Internal is just needing to find it within yourself. And so these are important, because if we don't have this, then we're continually looking outside of ourselves, hoping that our life, and we don't realize why our lives aren't working. But that's, in large part, that's why. So I guess the third part to that would also be, what type of self-esteem do we have? And all of these 3 things tend to go together. So self-esteem, there's 2 main types of self-esteem. There's, what was the word I was looking for? There's, well, I guess you could say like healthy self-esteem and damaged self-esteem. So healthy self-esteem is the ability to be like, you know what, I have value, I matter. There's no reason, and because of that, because I have value and because I matter, I deserve just as much as anybody else to be treated with dignity and respect. Because I matter, because I'm a living creature. That's it. I don't have to earn it. I don't have to wait for it to appear down the road. You get it just because you're here. That second type of self-esteem is where we really don't see our value. And we do think that the self-esteem comes from other people. And actually, let me back up. When we see that we have worth, when we see that we have value, because we know this, and just down into the core of your bones, you know it. You believe it as much as you believe anything else. You believe that the sky is blue and the grass is green, and 2 + 2 = 4. It's just a given that these things are true. So when you believe that, then when somebody else because people are people, when somebody else treats you poorly, we see their behavior as a reflection of them, not as a reflection of us. And that might sound kind of narcissistic to some people, like, oh, well, is this saying that you don't have any flaws? Nope, that's not what that's saying. That's saying that you deserve dignity and respect. And if somebody else can't, and that's just appropriate behavior. If somebody else can't treat you appropriately, that's not because it's not because of anything to do with you. It's 100% to do with them. So their bad behavior is on them. So if we have kind of a damaged self-esteem, or an others, PML, I think would call it the other self-esteem, it's self-esteem is coming from outside of ourselves. So we're needing other people to like us, to approve of us, to agree with us, to treat us right. And you've heard me talk about this before with, like I was saying, other people they're gonna do whatever it is they're gonna do. We don't have control over that. So if somebody says something hurtful, a person with kind of this type 1 or more healthier self-esteem, they're not going to internalize that. They're going to see that as, wow, what's wrong with you? Like, you're not acting appropriately. Versus that type 2 self-esteem, which is, oh my gosh, what's so wrong with me that you would mistreat me? I need to fix what's wrong with me so you treat me right. So those 3 things are really, really vital shifts to make in healing. And a lot of it, thankfully, just starts with the awareness that there's another way of thinking and doing things. Oh, I didn't realize that I was even doing this. And oh my gosh, that makes complete sense. And sometimes it's just that awareness that, radically can change somebody's life. But that's where, when our internal compass gets off, when we're doubting, when we're getting our self-esteem from outside of ourselves, when we're getting our validation from outside of ourselves, when we're getting our control from outside of ourselves, that's when our internal compass gets all kinds of screwed up, because we're looking around at other people to help, basically to make our lives work. And that's way too much power and responsibility to give to other people, even if they're wonderful, even if they have your best intentions in mind, because they aren't you. And at the end of the day, you're the one that has to live with the decisions of your actions. And all of the factors that come into play in making a decision for you. So yeah, that's something to chew on. Let's see. Let me scroll up here. Kevin says, yes, that's what happened to me. Yes. And this is what happens, frankly, to anybody who isn't just sat down and taught this. I just don't buy it. that there's people walking around out there that have gained this information, that they just have somehow picked it up from healthy parents. It just doesn't. I just don't think it works that way. It helps, don't get me wrong, but it's not. There's more to it than that. Oh, thank you. Okay, Fatima was saying, Dana, your mic is making static noises. Oh boy. Well, hopefully it's done doing that. And Alicia, you bring up a really great point. She was talking to Jack, and she says, the God of my family's understanding is wrong. They use religion as a tool to manipulate and control. But I realize that doesn't make all religions or believers bad. Yes, and here's the problem with the challenge, I should say, with God or religion is, when you're dealing, people can only see things from the perspective of where they are, from their point of understanding, right? I mean, that kind of goes for any of us. when you have a person that has a very kind of tangled up, twisted mindset, which is easy for people to get, everything that they filter is going to be, any incoming information is going to be filtered through that existing mindset. So if you have a person who has issues with power and control, they have this kind of dominance driven personality, any incoming information, it's called confirmation bias, they're going to filter that to support their existing view. This is how people get so incredibly off track with all kinds of things. And religion is a big one, because God is like the ultimate authority. And so then there's people that will take that and use it to support their own deeply skewed ideology. So, okay, let's see. Let me scroll. Maxine says, Dana, what is your zodiac sign? I am a Leo, and my birthday is Friday. Yay. Yay. For another year around the sun. Let's see. Let me scroll up. Okay. Oh, gosh. Yes, moderators. Jack is working overtime here. It looks like I need to do some housekeeping here. Let me scroll on. Okay. There's 2 people in here. I think I got him. I think I got him out, or at least hidden. So. The challenge too, back to what we're talking about, confirmation bias, is it's difficult to see when we're actually doing that, because another part of the puzzle is we're all hardwired to have what is the term? Cognitive resonance, which is the opposite of cognitive dissonance. So we're all wired to have our thoughts and actions line up. And we experience this distress that you guys probably heard this term before, of cognitive dissonance, when that is not occurring. So in order to get our thoughts and actions to line up, we have to somehow bridge that gap. And we do that by some sort of adjustment or justification. So we either get our actions in alignment with our thoughts, or we get our thought in alignment with our action that we're going to take. Let me give you an example. So if I have a belief that, let me just do something. Let's say I want to lose weight. Okay, so my thought is that I want to lose weight. If I decide, oh, I really want to go eat some ice cream. Well, for that action to happen, for me to go eat ice cream that's not in alignment with that thought, I'm either going to have to decide, no, I don't want ice cream. I'll have frozen yogurt instead, which is in alignment with the thought of I want to lose weight. Or if I have the ice cream, then I'm going to have to somehow justify it. So maybe I tell myself, oh, well, I'm eating a smaller portion of ice cream, or I won't have sprinkles on top, or I'll just, run a mile or 5 miles tomorrow. We justify it. So there's all of this stuff that's going on behind the scenes with our brain that we're not even aware of, but it drives, it's scary because it drives our behavior. And it's really easy to for any one of us to get down the path of making decisions that aren't good for us long term, and that or to interpret incoming information in a way that supports our belief, whatever that belief might be. Say for example, I want to quit drinking. Well, actually, no. Let's say somebody else wants me to quit drinking, but I don't want to quit drinking. And then I read articles about the benefits of red wine. And so then I start really focusing on this. Oh, I can't, it would be irresponsible of me to quit drinking, because studies have shown the benefits of a glass of red wine. So I really want to keep the benefits of red wine. So I'm just going to keep drinking. So you're basically cherry picking the information that supports what we want to do. And of course, you could take that same, yes, while it might be true that there's research that shows that a glass of red wine has benefits, it stops at one glass, and it's, I forget what, like a 6-ounce glass of wine. And of course, this wouldn't pertain if you have a drinking problem, or if there's other factors at work that are causing you more harm than any benefit. The harm greatly outweighs the benefit. You see what I'm saying? So, yeah. Okay. Shay says, do you have any suggestions on how to process and release anger stemming from a partner who was toxic and emotionally abusive? I'm really having trouble with even beginning to process this anger. Yes. The book, we did a book club on it. There's a video on it. Actually, I think that's the one set of book club notes that I have up on my website right now. I believe it's from this book. It's the Tao of Fully Feeling by Pete Walker. And in that book, it talks, there's so much wisdom in that book. He's just wonderful. But his process is basically, part of it is this verbal ventilation. So articulating how you feel. Like, I am angry. I was wronged. I was, this and this and this happened. It was not okay with me. I'm really upset. And that you're voicing that. Then there was a part having to do with assigning appropriate blame. So, because I think so many people, as a way to try to move past pain in a relationship, they or other people try to get them to focus on, well, what was your part in it? And that tends to keep people stuck. So it's realizing this person wronged you, and just acknowledging this is what they did that was not okay. This isn't about you focusing. This isn't the time or the place to be focusing on like the silver lining, or, oh, it's so great, you've learned so many lessons from this, or, oh, but you know what, you should have left sooner. This isn't the time to even open that door. This is about acknowledging somebody treated you terribly. It was not right. It was not deserved. It was not appropriate. It shouldn't have happened. That's on them. Their bad behavior is a result of their bad behavior. It's not a result of something that you did. Like we were talking about earlier, being treated appropriately, being treated with dignity and respect, basic human right. It's not something that you have to earn. You did not deserve or cause somebody else to abuse you. They did that because of their own dysfunction. So having them fully own, not that we can make them own that, but assigning appropriate blame and fully realizing you did not cause it. This has their behavior. You were on the receiving end of it, but this truly had nothing to do with you personally. This didn't happen to you because you were somehow bad. It happened because of them, because they think it's okay to abuse people, and it's not. So that was part of it. And then allowing yourself to feel the emotion, which can be really scary because we're not used to handling emotions, especially emotions of anger or sadness. And so a lot of people, myself included, struggle with that. And it can be really awkward for other people too, of, oh, I don't know what to do with your anger. I don't know what to do with your sadness. And so there can be this kind of feeling of, from ourselves, of, what if I get in tune with my anger and it's like a fire hose and I turn it on and I can't turn it off again? And I think that's the fear for a lot of people. It can help to give yourself time, like scheduled, structured time, to just be angry and to get it out, to truly think of it, at that emotion, as energy. There's a lot of energy in anger. There absolutely is. Allow yourself to get angry, go for a run. Get angry, clean out your closet. Get angry, hit pillows. Get angry, get in your car or go someplace where it's not going to bother other people. Scream your lungs out. Or you can write a letter with using the strongest language possible, writing a letter to this person and then burning it. Doing things, getting the poison out of your system is basically what you're doing. And allowing yourself to feel this way. What I was saying earlier, because we're not, as a society, we're not taught how to handle these emotions of anger or sadness. And so kind of the default, or the more of the socially expected, or like culturally indoctrinated, I guess, behavior is, whenever we see somebody that's angry, we try to calm them down, thinking that this is helpful. When they're sad, we try to cheer them up. It comes from a good place, but the result of that is that it tends to be very invalidating to the other person, because they feel how they feel. And, the vast majority of time, there's reasons behind the way that they feel. And so just giving them that space to feel that is, can be really beneficial. Okay, let's see. Let me scroll up. Yeah, that's a good way to look at it, Darlene. She says, one day I was lamenting about wasting 22 and a half years married to a narcissist, but then I realized that at least I didn't waste more. Yeah. That's interesting. Jennifer saying that she got her annual health screening done yesterday for her insurance company and needed a finger poke. Every time I get one, I always have a really bad reaction where my vision gets distorted and I sweat profusely and become really weak. When I get it done from my arm, I usually full on pass out. I read online that can happen to people who have experienced trauma in their past. I wonder how true that is, because my mom has the same thing, and my grandpa and his mom. Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, it sounds like a you know, a fight or flight reaction. Sort of, it sounds like along the lines of um, kind of any phobia. You know, you see a snake, people have the same type. I have the same reaction. Other people have kind of, people tend to have their things that that send them into crisis, you know, and any one of us. And I guess if you think about the whole concept of crisis, you know, crisis is what happens when um, kind of the situation at hand exceeds our ability to cope with it. And I would say, I don't want to say all, but I say the vast majority of us have at least one or two things that sends us quickly into crisis. Possibly, I mean, it could be a genetic thing. It could be, I don't know, blood, needles, that kind of thing, that tends to be a pretty universal fear. It does make me wonder how much is it nature versus nurture. But it's common. It's a common thing. Oh, good. I'm glad you like it. Shay says, yeah, I bought the Pete Walker book because of you, but haven't gotten very far in it. It is fantastic so far. Yeah, I adore him. I always joke that I'm going to get a tattoo with Pete Walker's name and one for Pia Melody. And then, of course, they'll put a restraining order on me and we will all go about our life. But no, both, those are two of my favorite. They're just fantastic. Pete Walker's other book, if you're new to all of this, is Complex PTSD from Surviving to Thriving. Fantastic book. So that's another one to add to the reading list if you're into it. Let's see. Fatima, how are you doing? I saw on here you're talking about you had a job interview. How are you and your sister doing? Let's see. Ember's Firewalker says, Namaste, Dana. I'm new here, but listened to your podcast for 3 years after 2 decades of domestic abuse, the marriage with a narcissist sociopath. I'm so grateful for your wisdom on my healing renewal. Love, Embers. Oh, thank you so much. That just means the world to me, and we're so glad to have you. 2 decades in an abusive marriage. My goodness. I'm so glad that you've found your way, and that you're moving forward in your health and healing. Fatima says, we're doing well. The CPS worker finally investigated us. It was nothing special, though. Hopefully, they were taking some notes, and that this is just the beginning of kind of them starting a case. Let's see. Okay, odds are she's still compiling paperwork. Fatima says, we told them the truth, and she said that she'll investigate the rest of the family, but hasn't ever since. Well, how about you and I, let's email and touch base again. Let's see, let me scroll up. Looks like Jack is having some issues too, health-wise. Oh my gosh. He said that they had to travel 2.5 hours to get something done. Was on the phone today again, trying to get paperwork through because someone screwed up. Oh yeah, how frustrating. Ugh. Story time with Miss Marissa asked, Dana, do you have any suggestions on how to cope with a narcissist trying to control custody of our son while I'm trying to save for an attorney? There's a couple things. First, if I were you, I would contact your local domestic violence agency and see if they have what's known as a legal advocate there. And there's often times they can refer you to attorneys that are familiar with kind of these high conflict, manipulative personalities. And it can be a more affordable way to go, just kind of in general, since they often work with men and women leaving abusive relationships. So that might be a route to consider. So yes, contacting your local domestic violence agency, asking if they have a legal advocate that you're concerned about your ex is trying to control your son and you're trying to save for an attorney, and do they have any advice? Do they have any anybody within their network that can help? Also, a lot of domestic, I for sure talk to them. This varies from state to state. It depends on a number of things, but a lot of them will also have a children's therapist, and and it's free. So, and therapy for whoever is getting out of the relationship. So it just might be worth calling and seeing kind of what resources they have available for you. In the meantime, suggestions on how to cope. I guess it depends too how old your son is. I think at a minimum, validating your son and obviously framing things in an age appropriate way. But if his dad's doing something that's frustrating him, or he's coming home crying, or he's upset, to validate him. Wow, you seem really frustrated. Is that, would you like to talk about it? And he's like, oh yeah, dad told me I had to redo all my homework because I had to mow the lawn over again because I didn't mow it in the way that he liked it. Then acknowledging, yeah, that sounds really frustrating. I don't blame you for being upset. Yes, your father is very particular about these certain things. I know it's kind of crazy making, isn't it? So that way you're not talking bad about your ex, but you're validating your child. I think so many people tend to, and it comes from a good place, but they're trying to talk up the ex of, oh, well, your father loves you, or your mother didn't mean that, or what have you, when then it's just kind of invalidating, and then the kids are more confused and more lost. So you don't need to talk bad about him, but just validating where your child's coming from. Oh, that's an interesting question. Blue Sailor asks, is the anger trapped inside a sign of healing? Or what are the signs of healing? Because sometimes I feel trapped in a circle of frustration. Oh, this is a really wonderful question. I think the process of releasing anger, which a lot of times is kind of known as, oh, like quote unquote, getting on with things, right? Or getting on with it, or getting over it, whatever it might be. Like we were talking about earlier, releasing anger, it's a process, it's not an event. And understandably so, especially if there's been a lot of hurt that's been going on for a long time. It's going to take working through that, experiencing those feelings when they surface. It goes back to the assigning of appropriate blame, realizing that you didn't cause it, it's somebody else's bad behavior. um, anger anger is anger is a sign that healing still needs to happen. It doesn't mean that it's not currently happening. So that's kind of, I guess, in some ways, the gift of anger is it lets us know where to bring our attention and what needs to be resolved, what needs to be processed and resolved. Um, Anger, if we're talking, if we have an ongoing relationship. So let's say, for example, you grew up with an abusive mother, and now let's just even say now your relationship with her is pretty good. Um, Overall, she's tolerable, but there's still all of this anger, and it can be easy and understandable for a person to think, okay, well, this anger is due to how she treated me as a child. And in part, yeah, that is part of it. But anger is also, it's an emotion of self-protection. It lets us know when our boundaries have been crossed. And so when your boundaries, regardless of what age, so if your boundaries were crossed when you're a child, there's never, we're still holding on to that anger and that hurt and that pain because there hasn't been any resolution of that. So, which is difficult. And so what happens with a lot of kids or adults that have these types of dynamics where somebody has caused them a lot of pain, there's never been any accountability or sincere acknowledgement or sincere apology or anything about it. And then they're kind of expected to go on as, yeah, everything's fine. That anger, that hurt, those original boundary violations haven't been addressed and corrected. Like we were saying earlier, when somebody causes damage to the relationship between the two of you by hurting you, then we can't be the ones to do the work of repairing it. They have to be the ones to do the work of repairing it. But unfortunately, so many of us try to do the work. Well, I need to learn, I just need to forgive and forget, and I need to just give them another chance. I just need to trust. And so we're working double time trying to quote unquote get over things, so we can have some sort of relationship with them. But that's exactly why we're not able to get over those emotions, because that reconciliation, that acknowledgement of bad behavior hasn't been acknowledged. It's significantly easier to work towards releasing that anger if that person's not still in our life. My guess would be the vast majority of times when people realize, oh my gosh, yeah, I'm angry because of what happened 10, 20, 50 years ago. I'm still angry about that because, like I said before, old issues don't come up. It's unresolved issues do. And if that issue is not able to be resolved, that's one thing. But if we still have a relationship with that other person, or we're trying to convince ourselves that we still have a relationship with that other person, it's very difficult to do that when there's just this giant elephant in the room. And so that anger is going to continue to be there because these major conversations aren't being had. These major conversations that would ideally lead to some sort of resolution or termination of the relationship. So I guess in a nutshell, anger is a sign that we've had some sort of boundary violation. It's an emotion of self-protection. It's unpleasant and uncomfortable, and it can be scary to feel anger. But it's there. The ultimate purpose of anger is for us to take corrective action to keep ourselves safe. So, or to keep those that we love or care about safe. When we experience anger, we all have these soft spots of unresolved hurt. And like I was saying, anger can be a very powerful, positive emotion in a lot of ways, because as we go through life, we'll catch ourselves like, oh my gosh, I did not realize, you get kind of knocked off guard. I cannot believe I had this reaction, or I cannot believe that this upset me so much. And or I haven't thought about this event or this person in 20 years. And all of a sudden this happened, and we're surprised at how upset we still are. It's because that there hasn't been that resolution yet. So it's just a sign of we need to work towards processing those feelings. Okay, let's see. Yes, Kevin, I agree completely. The compassion is a big part of healing. And he was saying a big part of healing is observing from the outside of your own mind the situation from an eagle's eye view. And you can see the sorrow and the smallness in the abuser. Yeah, it can. I think when you make that shift to realizing that their mistreatment of you, it's not your fault. It's another person's behavior is their responsibility. So it's them acting inappropriately for their own reasons. But compassion, I would say it's even more important to have compassion for yourself. Like, people have been talking about, oh, they were in this abusive marriage for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. Having compassion for yourself for doing what you thought was best at the time. You stayed for the reasons that you stayed at the time, instead of looking back and getting really upset or really down on yourself. Giving yourself the compassion and grace that you did the best you could at that time, and that's all any of us can do. Yes, this is a great question, Denora. Thank you for bringing this up. Says, okay, question. If anger signals a boundary violation, is this a reason a toxic person reacts in anger? Yes, exactly. And this also speaks volumes of their mindset. So again, this goes back to appropriate behavior. The vast majority of us learn, we're socialized. This is where I start and end, and this is where you start and end. These are appropriate boundaries. Like, I'm not going to read your journal. I'm not going to go through your mail. I'm going to expect if we live together as roommates, that we're going to figure out some sort of plan for, I don't know, cleaning the house, or who's going to do laundry. We have this idea of what it takes to get along with other people and what's appropriate behavior. Now, because everybody's boundaries are different, so this is where it's important to clarify it. But the bigger issues here are when people are really lacking the larger concepts of boundaries, of where I start and stop and where you start and stop. So if a person has the expectation of, oh, well, you know what? I expect my children to pay all of my bills until the day I die. Because I'm their mother. I gave birth to them. They owe me. They owe me, right? They owe me for as long as I'm here. That's an inappropriate expectation. So because it's not honoring them as adults with their own family. Abusers, people that become abusive tend to get upset when other people set boundaries with them, when we tell them no, or you disagree with them. You don't do things their way because they don't see other people as individuals. It's a very strange and immature mindset where it's an extension of them. Now, again, if you can kind of see this from your perspective or our perspective, like for example, we realize we get frustrated. We all get frustrated, but we know that there's a line that it's okay to be frustrated. It's not okay to go, lash out, like just unleash on another person, or it's not okay to get in a fist fight with them unless you're defending yourself. It's not okay to go key their car. There's lines for appropriate behavior. We can feel, if you've ever been that angry, you can absolutely feel justified in that moment of, this person did me wrong and therefore they deserve it. They deserve whatever justice I feel, vigilante justice is coming down the pike at them. They cheated on me, I'm going to key their car, kind of a thing. With abusive people, the mindset is, actually, let me just give you another example. If you've ever been to the grocery store when you're really hungry and you have no patience for anything, like your blood sugar's low, you're in a foul mood, you're impatient, you're frustrated, you're just not in a good place. Like you just need to get into the car and open a bag of chips or whatever because you're just not doing good. And any little thing sets you off. There's the lady in front of you with 4 kids and they've got to all walk like in a horizontal line, like they're blocking the aisle, right? And you're in a hurry. It's frustrating. There's the person in front of you that's walking slow. There's the person in front of you that's acting like they've never been in a grocery store before and they're just kind of wandering around getting in your way. There's the people in line who they're having their 3-year-old put everything one at a time onto the conveyor belt and it's taken 10 times longer than it needs to. There's the person that's writing the check in the checkout line. All of these things, any one of these things, when you're in a bad mood, it's infuriating, right? And it can feel, if we don't have that filter, if we don't have that boundary that holds us back, like if we didn't have that, we would feel completely justified at just unloading on any one of these people. Lady, what are you doing? Taking all this time, or having your kid, now is not the time to have your kid, place items on the belt. There's those of us with people, places to go and people to see. Or we can feel justified. Well, yeah, you know what? I wouldn't have yelled at you had you not been, wandering around the grocery store and getting in my way. Oh, I wouldn't have yelled at you, or I wouldn't have gotten so frazzled had you not done XYZ. You were walking slow. You guys were walking in a line. You didn't know what you wanted. My behavior is somehow your fault. In the moment, it can seem like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, it can seem like that. But that's, as adults, we realize you can feel however you want to feel that stuff. It's okay to be in a bad mood. It's okay to get frustrated by that kind of stuff, but it's not okay to just unleash. You're frustrated because you're frustrated. Like, contain yourself. You know, we have to learn how to moderate our behavior. That's part of boundaries. That's part of becoming an adult. Abusive people don't have that. So when they get frustrated, you forgot to buy bread at the store, and then they fly into a rage. They start belittling you, cussing at you, yelling at you, putting you down, this, that, and the other. We can't make another person act that way. They're acting that way because that's how they think is an appropriate way to react. And that's exactly it. They react versus people with a little bit more, not a little bit, with a lot more emotional maturity and impulse control are able to rein it in and respond. That's the difference. It's reacting versus responding. We all have kind of the same feelings inside. Man, I get real, this person really did me wrong. I would love nothing more. If fantasies, I would love to go key their car or dump a gallon of paint on it, or I'd really like to teach them a lesson. That's human to feel that way. When you're wronged, it's totally normal to feel that level of rage and to want to kind of settle the score. But that's reactive. And it's going to just more often than not cause more trouble for you. Versus being responsive, which means kind of taking a breath and being like, okay, I have all this anger. I'm not going to let it out in this way. I'm going to kind of point that fire hose of anger in another direction. Instead, I'm going to power clean my house, or I'm going to go for a run, or I'm going to journal, or I'm just going to sit here and scream at the top of my lungs until I lose my voice. So this is the problem with boundary violations and abusive people, is they don't have a solid sense of what appropriate boundaries are. So that's where a lot of this it goes back. This is why it's not just an anger issue. You've probably heard people talk about that. Abusive behavior, it's not about anger. It's not about frustration. It's about power and control. This is why. Because they can take anger management classes all day long. It's not about that. It's when a person has this idea of a skewed idea about boundaries, they're also going to have a skewed idea of expectations. So if their idea is, well, that whatever it might be, that my spouse should cook me dinner. And let's say they marry somebody who's like, yeah, I agree with you. My job as your spouse is to cook you dinner every single night. And then one night their spouse works late or gets the flu and they don't cook dinner. And that abusive person gets very upset by that because there's this level of rigidity in their approach and unable to empathize with other people. So this is why turning yourself into a pretzel and being like, okay, well, I just need to meet their expectations. You know, they think that I should behave this way. They think that if I only did this and this and this, then the abuse would stop. Then they would finally start treating me better. That's not the case. And it's not the case for any of us. Again, go back to that grocery store situation. We've all been there, right? You've been out in public, a restaurant, a movie theater, the grocery store, when you're frustrated for whatever reason, something comes up. And you want to go yell at the parents that brought their baby to the movie theater, or whatever it is, the waitress that's ignoring you, or the whatever. This is why, because it's not just this one situation, it's the mindset that's behind it. So this is why none of us can make enough changes in our behavior to where that would never happen, because it's not about us to begin with. It's about them. Again, thinking about yourself when you get frustrated and angry. If you all of the different things that can make a person frustrated or angry, it's going to vary from day to day, from moment to moment. But because we have appropriate boundaries, we're able to rein that in and realize, yeah, I would really love to go give those parents of that screaming baby some, peace of my mind. What are they doing with the baby in the movie theater at 10:30 at night anyhow? And it's an R-rated movie, and yeah, a lot of us feel that way, but we don't do it. So, or we might, but we're not going to go get in a fist fight with them. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's that line. So yeah, so if a person doesn't have a healthy understanding of boundaries, their behavior by default is going to continually cross the line with you and with other people because they feel justified in that. Let's see. Tammy says, I should start up a place where people can go to scream, soundproof. I'd be a billionaire. LOL. I screamed in the car, but I live in the city. People can still hear if they're close enough. We used to joke about that here, and I really do think that there is merit in this idea. We used to joke about having a place called the Rage Cafe, where it would be in the back. People just junk, old junk cars, junk appliances, whatever, and people could just get a nice cup of tea and a baseball bat. They could just go outside and unleash, and then come back inside and just have their cup of tea and just get recentered. We joke. I do think that there is some benefit to that, because there is, as a society, we don't have a place for people to get out these emotions of sadness or of anger, especially anger. I think the closest thing is maybe video games, but it's important to get those feelings out and to just have them be validated. So Gina says, Dana, do you cut your own bangs? They're so perfectly cut. Do you have any tips? I just got my hair cut like 2 days ago, and she did my bangs. Normally I have been cutting them, but you can tell when I cut them because they're not even close to perfect. It's amazing how jagged they are when I do them myself. So I'm sorry, I have no tips. do not ever take hair cutting tips from me. I should not be allowed around scissors. Let's see. Yes, and Blue Sailor was saying, no boundaries means abuse, financial, emotional, and physical. Yes. And Kenneth says, anger and entitlement is a horrible combination. Absolutely. It really is. Entitlement in general is just a huge red flag. I mean, it just shows a complete lack of regard for others. And I think kind of by default, you're gonna have significant issues with anybody who has a sense of entitlement, because it goes back to that domination driven mindset. There's kind of these two mindsets that are out there. We have domination driven, or we have team oriented. And for people to get along and be able to have relationships and be able to complete projects and kind of get along in society, there has to be this level of team orientedness where it's, I respect you enough, you respect me enough that we can get the job done together, whatever that job might be. And when that's not there, when it's just domination driven, then it's that person It's the whole mindset of, well, it's me at the destruction of you. I win, you lose. And that it just it's a short-term way to be. It just doesn't do anybody any good, even the person that has the domination driven mindset. It's a lonely way to be. It burns bridges, it ends relationships, it's not good for society. There's really just no benefit to it. But a lot of people have that mindset and they might not even realize it. Like when, and of course it can come and go, right? So noticing how do we handle stress and frustration and anger is huge, huge. So does a person, or do you slip into that domination driven? It's going to be my way or no way kind of a thing. I'm right, you're wrong. It's very rigid. There's no flexibility. Or if you're fighting with the other person, or let's say you're in a relationship and you're having a disagreement with the person, and a lot of people are surprised to learn that you can disagree without fighting. So you can like, oh, I don't see things eye to eye with you. Okay, well, let's discuss it. And then it ends up getting resolved and moved on. Versus other people, a lot of other people especially if they grow up in an environment where there's fighting, which when there's fighting, then we're not even talking about the issue. It's generally not even the issue at hand. It's a power struggle at that point. So it's that when that fight breaks out, for a lot of people, it's about trying to destroy the other person. And this happens too when people don't have that boundary of, okay, if we're dating or we're working together or whatever it might be, there's that boundary with fighting fair. They're not going to pull low blows. They're not going to pull deeply sensitive things about the other person in order to yeah, I win, to just decimate the other person. Low blows. And some people do. They'll pull out all the stops of whatever they think that they can say that's really going to hurt, have maximum impact, maximum negative impact. That's what they're pulling out of their arsenal, because that's what they think they should do. This is how we fight, right? We both just say the most meanest, nastiest things to get our point across, that we're hurt. So I want you to suffer as much as I'm suffering. But that doesn't resolve anything, right? It just causes more pain. Okay, let's see. Let me scroll up here. Let's see. Oh, I bet. That's a great idea. Alicia says, I agree, Dana. I worked at a craft center in college, and smashing the unclaimed pottery that hadn't been fired yet to recycle the clay was super satisfying. I love that. That would, I actually like that idea more than smashing up junk cars. Because you could, I guess it's kind of, I'm just thinking out loud, like the whole process of transmuting one thing from another. If you had a place where people could smash up old pottery or dishes or whatever, and then to make a mosaic out of it, would be cool. I don't know. I'm fine. I understand the appeal of smashing up old cars too. junk cars. Milk Dud says, my stepmother is cluster B. I've cut her out completely, and it's affected me and my dad's relationship. He wants to make amends. Any tools to help stay stern? He uses guilt to try to change my mind. So this goes back to what we were talking about a little bit earlier with people experiencing anger, or they're trying to set boundaries because they're like, I can't have this level of chaos in my life. They set a boundary, but then they're like, okay, well, I just need to somehow get over this and continue on this relationship, and I don't know how to do that. And I guess the way that you would do something like that is to have those boundaries in that relationship. So thinking to yourself, because obviously, more obvious than not, she's probably hasn't changed. And even if she has changed, it's probably not enough to where she's going to be completely accountable for, she's going to be completely aware of and accountable for all of the damage that's been done, and is going to be willing to work towards making amends. So in terms of a relationship with your dad, thinking about how can you have a relationship with him kind of given the limitations of this situation. Setting both you and him up for success. So my guess would be that maybe meeting him for lunch at a restaurant once a week, just the two of you. Or again, doing activities outside of their house, the two of you. These kinds of things. And not trying to go back to doing what you did before, having her around, or maybe even telling your dad certain information that he's going to share with her because they're married. So kind of limiting the information that you're sharing, and trying to connect with your father in a way that's that still allows for that level of peace to maintain in your life. So does that help? I guess I'm not clear if you're wanting, sounds like you've cut her off completely, but that you're still wanting a relationship with your dad. I guess I would just make it very clear that you want if you do want a relationship with him, making it clear, Dad, I really want a relationship with you, but, and maybe phrase it this way: at this point in time, I am not interested in having a relationship with her. So that way the conversation doesn't get sidetracked. So if you were to say something like, for example, I'm not interested in having a relationship with her, then next thing you know, he's going to want to debate that point. Well, I don't know, maybe, or that can cause more friction when it's just not needed. You can simply just say, you know what, at this point in my, which is all true, this point in my life, I'm not interested in reopening or having a relationship with her. I would love to see you, could we go out for coffee on Sundays? And maybe that just means, especially during times of COVID, you making coffee and bringing 2 to-go cups and you guys going for a drive. Something like that, something that you just spend time one-on-one together. Milk Dud says, yeah, and I have a son now and I'm trying to avoid the abuse on him. He always turns it around on me. Oh, I want to retire and this complicates things. You're making it difficult, et cetera, et cetera. This can add to the challenge. So I would make it very clear, again, if it's possible for you and your dad to go out and have a cup of coffee or lunch or whatever it might be. And oftentimes I will say too, it can, again, COVID, it's a different situation. Under normal circumstances, having these kinds of conversations in public can actually work well, because it's sort of like this built-in boundary of, generally most people the conversation's not going to escalate too much because you're out in public. So it can kind of help to have tense conversations with both people realizing, assuming the boundaries of both people are within, that area of being reasonable, they're not going to cause a scene or something like that. But letting your dad know, you know what, I know we don't see things eye to eye on this. And I feel like whenever I bring up concerns, it's turned around on to me. And you're in the middle of it, you know. I don't like stepmom, or I don't like stepmom's behavior. She's caused a lot of damage, and yeah. And my intention isn't to make it difficult, but here's where I'm coming from. I have a son, and I want a relationship with you, but I want a healthy relationship with you. And this is what it looks like for me to have a healthy relationship with you. And these are my concerns with having my son go over there. I don't want him in the middle of it. This stuff it's between us. And I'm concerned that he's going to get dragged in the middle of it, or that it's going to kind of poison his opinion of me. And that needs to not happen. But I think it's completely appropriate as a parent to say this is my expectation, and to not have your child especially turned against you. And so if you start seeing that happening, or if they start bringing up adult issues in front, to your child, especially to your child, that had nothing to do with him, that only present you in a negative light, then I would say then it's time to be like, okay, well, we need to take some different steps to with how we're going to have this relationship. So maybe that means that my son can't be over there unless I'm present, or maybe he just can't go, or he just doesn't go over there at all. To have to kind of reevaluate. It's your job as a parent to protect your child and to protect your relationship with your child. So if other people are doing things that are causing damage, then it's time to step in and be like, okay, we need to reevaluate and either kind of come to some sort of truce or some understanding, but this can't continue because I don't want it poisoning my son's mind. Milk Dud says, yes, he gets very frustrated when things don't go his way. He's never seen my side of things. He rolls his eyes when I say, stepmom emotionally and verbally abused me. He doesn't believe that type of abuse exists. Like, it has to be physical abuse in order to be abuse. And unfortunately, this is more common with older generations. But, it's an antiquated way of thinking. It really is. There's been tons of research done about emotional and verbal abuse, and it is profoundly damaging, just as damaging as physical abuse. There's brain changes that happen. There's personality changes that can happen. If emotional and physical, or if emotional and verbal abuse wasn't a problem, we wouldn't have an issue with all of these kids committing suicide because they're getting bullied at school. So it's anybody that's been on the receiving end of verbal or emotional abuse knows it's oftentimes worse than physical abuse, because it just does, the damage is so pervasive. It often causes long-lasting scars for a person. Mm. That's that's cute. Amber's Firewalker. I like your little emoji person there. And I agree completely. There is so much power in that. She says, I had gray rocked my mom, who has untreated bipolar and borderline personality disorder. My counselor says that she doesn't have the emotional capacity for respect. So now I just expect insanity and walk away when it happens. Yes, yes. There's so much freedom that occurs when we start seeing the situation clearly for what it is, instead of what we hope it should be, what we feel what it should be, how it used to be, any of that. This is how it currently is. And if this other person is behaving inappropriately for whatever reason, realizing this is their limitations, this has nothing to do with you. This is their limitations. And for us to, and it takes, boy, it takes time. And even with time and practice, like there's still going to be those moments that catch you off guard. You're like, yeah, I fell for it again. I got roped in again. But when we're able to see this chaos coming, like, yeah, you know what? This is what I'm walking into. It's their birthday. I don't know. Mom's going to be drunk. Dad's going to be yelling at mom that she's drunk when he knows she has a drinking problem. She's had a drinking problem for 25 years. And so he's upset that she's been drinking, why? Because she's always drinking. And then I get upset because dad's upset because mom's do you see what I'm saying? When you realize, oh my gosh, this is the chaos that is my family. When you walk into this, knowing what it is ahead of time, it can be so game changer. So then when you walk into something, you're like, of course this is how it is, because this is how it's always been. And if they do something different and you get there and let's say mom's sober, or let's say mom's drunk and dad's not yelling at her, you're like, oh, well, this is a nice surprise. Like, there's a little bit more calm going on. You're surprised, because that's the appropriate reaction to that, right? It's, oh, I'm surprised that this is actually going so well, because it hasn't before. So when we see situations for what they actually are, when we're anticipating this degree of chaos, and when it happens, we're not caught off guard because we're expecting it. This is how it tends to normally go. If they are acting appropriately, we're like, oh, that's so nice. That just what a treat. But we don't expect it to last either. It makes everything so much more enjoyable. It really does when you're dealing with difficult people. Because oftentimes it's the resistance to their difficultness that causes us the most pain. It's when people are, man, I got to this birthday party and mom was drunk and we're so upset about it. And it's like, you're in denial. Yeah, she shouldn't be drunk and this shouldn't have happened and it's not right and it's not fair. But it is what it is. And she's made no effort to change or to get sober or whatever it might be. Or, she's unmedicated and has a significant mental illness. Like, it's not reasonable to expect her to behave neurotypically when she has a untreated mental illness. Okay, let's see. Amber says, wow, Dana, it's like you've been inside my family of origin home. Yeah, I think we all, anybody that's grown up in dysfunction has some of that, right? And it's like this chain of people getting upset with one another, and it's all blurred boundaries. And it's so hard. And it's hard to step back from that, especially if you're the third or fourth person down the chain, right? You've got one person who's doing something dysfunctional or destructive. You've got another person who's upset with them. You've got another person who's upset with that person, and so on down the line. And then it's just, it's a full out brawl breaks out pretty soon. And my brother has absolutely mastered this. Like, he's so good at just detaching and from this. And I still fall into it every now and again, and it catches me off guard, and I get so upset. I'm like, oh, Dana, you know better. I can't believe you fell for it. But it just time and practice. So let's see. Let me scroll up here. Jennifer saying to Jack and Huffle Mom. Yeah, her dad. Okay. He did, however, want to emphasize to me when he wasn't abusing me that forgiveness is a powerful tool. And he used our religion to justify forgiveness. My therapist thinks that was a way to get me to forgive him as much as anyone. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yep. That's very common. Abusers twist things around and justify their own behavior in all kinds of just really sick and twisted ways. Let's see here. Let me scroll. Alicia makes the comment of that, yes, that a time she had very few boundaries. And in order to start building them, she had to figure out what it was that she wanted and needed, and what it was that she was and was not willing to tolerate. Yep. That's a great place to start. Knowing these things about ourselves, we have to know where our boundaries are in order to be able to hold them. So if we don't know, if we can't let other people know that they've crossed a boundary, and if other people don't know where our boundaries are, again, there's certain boundaries that are more of a given. It's not okay for you to steal money out of my purse. It's not okay for you to read my mail or read my journal, or like to lock my kid in a closet. Like, none of this stuff's okay. Certain things don't need to be said, but the details, the gray areas of things oftentimes do. So we have to know when those lines have been crossed in order for us to hold them with other people. And knowing when they're crossed is in a large part tuning in to how you're feeling. So we can tell when there's been a boundary that's been violated based off of, okay, you're feeling frustrated, or that generally irritated is probably the first sign. Irritated, frustrated, upset, you're rehashing conversations, you're journaling about the same thing over and over again. You're talking about the same thing over and over again. You've got to pick up the phone as soon as this person leaves, and call a friend or your therapist. And like, you would never believe what they just did. This kind of thing. These are all signs you've had a boundary that's been crossed. And then it kind of goes back to, is this a reasonable, I mean, most of us don't need to ask this, but is this a reasonable boundary? Where is the expectation here? and what needs to be done in order to correct that boundary, to get things back in balance. And but generally, like the vast majority of time, the people that are in or recovering from abusive homes or abusive relationships, their damaged boundary tends to be on the side of permissiveness. So it's continual forgiveness, continual allowance, second and 22nd and 222nd chances. It's that's their boundary's not tight enough. So versus the other side, which it tends to be, it's all about them and not enough about other people. Yeah, Alicia's saying, building boundaries was recognizing what those things were, what actions I could take to try to change it, what I could not change, and when it was time to give up and walk away. Yep. I think there's so much wisdom in the Serenity Prayer, regardless of whatever your religious beliefs might be. Just how does it go? Dear God, grant me this serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. That's it. That's it. Or I guess if the spiritual twist on it doesn't resonate with you, there's that old, was it Kenny Rogers? Kenny Rogers song that you got to know when to hold them, know when to fold them, know when to walk away, and know when to run. It's kind of the same thing. Yeah. But when we know when we need to do what strategy is appropriate for what situation, it just makes an ocean of difference. So. Big D says, I was seeing a therapist and she wanted me to speak to my parents after I went no contact with them. What do you think? Well, I think I don't have any context. And so I feel like it would be really irresponsible for me to kind of throw my 2 cents in on something like that when it's such a major decision. I will kind of chime in on some things to consider about this, which would be, getting clear with what were your decisions for not wanting to speak to your parents, and I guess how do you feel about that, and what do you feel that you need to do or would be a good way for you to proceed? Because again, remember, you're the one that has to live with the consequences of your actions. And I'm not saying that in some weird guilt-inducing way, but if you reopen contact, then you're, potentially opening Pandora's box again, up to all that chaos. You need to be able to have peace with whatever decision that you're making at that time. And when you have peace with whatever decision that you're making, if you're like, you know what, my parents were incredibly abusive, I cut off contact with them, they are so hateful and hurtful, and there's no accountability on their behalf. They're not, we have no relationship. These are the people that just, my mother is the one that gave birth to me. That's it. And I feel like I need to just cut off contact because this relationship, it just brings too much chaos and pain in my life, then that's what you need to do, and I support you in doing whatever that you feel is the best in terms of that. And it might change throughout your life too, and that's okay too. All any of us can do is to make the best, the most empowered decision we can with the information we have at the time. And I think there's a lot of people out there, even including mental health professionals, that don't support no contact with family. In large part, they just don't understand because they have never experienced that. So they're only able to draw on their own experience of family problems, which is really unfortunate, and it can be incredibly damaging. So, um, yeah, you need to do what you need to do in order to keep yourself safe and sane, and do it in such a way that you minimize the regret as much as possible. And it's okay. Okay, yeah, Big D is saying it's hard to have a relationship with a predator. Yeah, there you go. Absolutely. There is no relationship possible with a predator. I guess personally too, I have an issue with um, anybody, and this might seem strange seeing how I kind of have this advice show, but like anybody trying to dictate what other people do with their lives. So the difference is, it's one thing to say, hey, here's my 2 cents. Take it for what it's worth. But at the end of the day, you need to make your own decision because you have to live with the consequences. That's one thing versus somebody from a position of power, which a therapist is, um, saying you need to do X, Y, and Z. Like I would never tell anybody here, you must reopen contact. You must give them another chance. You need to do X, Y, and Z. To me, that's not appropriate. That's controlling. It's kind of like out of the frying pan into the fire kind of a thing. You're going from one controlling person to the next, and everybody's going to have their opinion. And a therapist might have, okay, this is, yeah, and here's kind of my thoughts about it. Here's some concerns. Let's discuss. But at the end of the day, it's important for you to have that power, for you to have that internal locus of control that we were talking about earlier, and also that internal locus of evaluation where you're able to validate yourself in the direction that you're heading. So even especially when you're in a situation where you have a therapist or me or somebody else that's saying, ooh, you know what, I don't know, think about this, or whatever, that you're able to turn inward and say, okay, how do I feel about that? And where am I at the end of the day? What do I feel is best for me to do? Which direction do I need to head? And then you find your own North Star and go that direction. Even if you're in a room full of people that are telling you otherwise, it's trusting your own judgment. Let's see. Let me scroll up here. Cecilia is saying, yeah, I have no idea what my parents' diagnosis is, but what I do know is that they were hurtful and neglectful, and that's enough for me to distance myself. Yeah. Yeah, when you have somebody that has no accountability for their behavior, they're low on empathy, they're low to no remorse, and they continue to do the same hurtful things over and over again. There isn't a relationship there, and so then it's sort of like, okay, how much distance, in what ways do I need to distance myself in order to keep myself safe and sane? Like, what does that look like? And that's going to vary from person to person, you know. Let's see. Let me scroll up here. let's see here. Hugh is saying something about, there's an author who goes in depth on evil entities being attracted to evil people. Um, I, you know, evil, hurtful people tend to just hurt people. So kind of wherever they go, whether or not those other people are evil or good or somewhere in between, it doesn't matter. It's that level of malicious. Anybody with like malicious intent, they're just gonna cause destruction wherever they go. And a lot of people I know get really hung up on this whole concept of like attracts like, of, oh, well, kind of, what you put out in the world is what comes back to you. And um, that's really, it's faulty thinking, and it's concerning thinking, because on the surface it seems like that kind of works, right? Like, okay, if we put out good energy, we tend to get back good energy. You smile at somebody, they smile back at you. You're a helpful person, other people tend to be helpful. That holds true until it doesn't. And sometimes you get things like, 6-month-old babies that get cancer, or uh, bad things can and do happen to good people, and good things can happen to bad people. It's just life. There's a certain level of randomness to things, and I think it's important that we acknowledge that, because if we don't, then we can start feeling, I mean, it can really rattle a person and make them, whoa, God, what does this mean? What does this mean? Is this, if I get cancer, or if I attract an abusive person, is this am I paying for some sort of like unknown karmic debt? Or am I cursed, or is God mad at me? Like, what's going on? Why is this bad thing happening to me? Because I'm a good person, so why is this bad thing happening? Or this person's totally innocent, right? They're a 6-month-old baby. They truly are innocent. They are a baby. So why do bad things happen? And it's just, and all throughout time, because again, human beings too, we're hardwired to make sense of our environment. And so in an attempt to do this, we do all kinds of mental gymnastics to try to come up with a map of our environment so things make sense to us. But that map only goes so far, and there's just certain things that just happen. It's not, you know, if you attract an abusive person in your life, or an evil person in your life, it doesn't mean that you're evil. Oftentimes it's the exact opposite. If you attract an abusive person, it's because of a lot of these traits that are normally associated with goodness. Having a big heart, having compassion for others, having wanting to work as a team, wanting to get help, have them get help, being caring, being compassionate, all of these good traits that get exploited by problematic people. Okay, let's see. Let me scroll up here. Bliss says, Dana, what is the name of the 2 authors you mentioned tonight? I would like to buy their books. Thank you. I mentioned Pete Walker, and he has written at least 2 books. But the 2 that I know about that are absolutely fantastic are CPTSD, From Surviving to Thriving. And the second book, actually this might be his first book, the first book, the Tao of Fully Feeling. And there's another book that I mentioned, and I forget the author's name right now, but it's called Necessary Endings, and it's fantastic. I really, really like that book. What other book did I mention? And then I mentioned Pia Melody, who I think is also fantastic. She has a book series that is wonderful. And if you were to start with any of her books, I would say, so the book series that she has, the title all starts with the word facing, like facing intimacy, facing codependency, facing, so and so. The facing intimacy one is wonderful. They're all wonderful, but I know the concept of codependency is, it can be very um, inflammatory for a lot of people. And so anyways, I would just start with the facing intimacy one if you're interested. Let's see. Yeah. Well, okay, that's a good comment. Bricks and feathers. And that's a great way to put it too. Says to Big D, your therapist is bringing her own issues into your therapy, and this is inappropriate. Yep, that sums it up really well. I agree completely. Alicia says, I was attracted to qualities that I wanted to have but thought I lacked. I quickly learned that I had those qualities, and all he was doing was reflecting them back at me. Yes, let me just tell you, expand on that a little bit more. With my relationship with Jack, this, of course, this was years ago. So when I first started kind of going down this healing process and trying to understand everything and make sense of kind of what had happened, and started to come across I don't know, like Instagram and Facebook and things people were posting on there about narcissists and sociopaths, and I came across a post that was very much like what you had said about oh, this person's just reflecting the qualities. That was the mirroring. He was mirroring me, and I was attracted to all of the qualities that he was mirroring back to me. And that actually did not give me any peace. It caused a lot of anxiety because I thought, well, does that make me a narcissist then? If I, like, if I'm looking for my own qualities within somebody else, um, and this gave me a lot of anxiety about the situation. But it's not that. It's because as human beings, we're wired to like people that are like us. So people that have similarities, they think the same way, they have similar hobbies, they have similar political views, they have child raising techniques, they like the same kind of books. We tend to, not tend to, we are wired for that level of consistency. It's a weird way that kind of we have that development of trust, I guess. Like, oh, well, I know I read, I don't know, nonfiction. And so this person reads nonfiction. Oh, then that's a point we can bond on. And we're kind of quick to lower our guard because it's this is just a psychological thing. We all do it. And you have personality types and personality disorders that do a lot of heavy mirroring because they don't have a solid sense of self. And that can really take the person being mirrored on just a wild ride. But it is interesting when you realize, oh my gosh, yeah, all of these things I liked about him, especially when they move on to the next person and they're no longer those things, realizing, Oh, no, it's not this level of like narcissism. It was, I liked that he read the same kind of books as me. We bonded over our shared interests, which you would do with anybody, but except they weren't really shared. Like it was just all your interests being mirrored back at you. So yeah, it's weird. Let's see here. Yes, I Huffle Mom was talking to Jennifer. Um, Jennifer was saying she struggles with a lack of anger, and Huffle Mom makes the wonderful point to Jennifer and says, "You don't lack anger. Annoyance is a form of anger." Yes, yes. So it's it's more so that you're not allowing yourself to fully feel that anger, that you're very busy repressing it and holding it down. And again, this is very, very common when a parent has been the one that's been abusive. It's a lot for a person to fully come to terms with the fact that they've been so profoundly hurt in so many different ways by somebody who is supposed to protect them. And for a young child, especially as they're growing up and they're being hurt by they're being preyed upon by somebody who's supposed to be looking out for them, they don't know what to make of that. And it's complete overwhelm. And so they're trying their best to understand how this could possibly be the case. And making excuses, minimizing, rationalizing, justifying, oftentimes internalizing, what was my part in this? And it's just it's a lot to unwind and to allow yourself to truly start acknowledging those uncomfortable emotions, because then it sort of opens, or at least, oh yeah, kind of leads to, well then what happens if I allow myself to really get angry or to feel that hurt? Then what is this going to mean with our relationship? And right now there's kind of maybe this uneasy tenseness going on there, or uneasy tension, but there's still some semblance of a relationship. And if I really admit to myself that this is all of the hurtful things that have been done, then I don't know how that relationship could continue, which would mean losing a parent, which is a lot. So, yeah, you know, and regardless of what was going on with your dad, it's okay. It's okay to be like, what happened to you, it's not right, and it wasn't fair, and it never should have happened. There is no excusing it. There is no minimizing it. There is no justifying it. There's no sane, reasonable person that can look at his actions and say, and somehow make excuses for that. What he did was not okay. And it's okay for you to be upset. And sometimes I think it does start with getting in tune with those more the quieter forms of that emotion, of the annoyance, that frustration, that level of uneasiness, and then just allowing yourself to turn up the volume on it. Jennifer says, it's hard to come to terms with him saying, um, or I guess to keep saying that he was abusing me because he cared for me in so many other ways. Yes, but also realize that a big part of what drove his caring behavior was it was a way for him to ease his guilt. It was a way for him to prove to himself that he really was a good parent, you know? So it was, it just, this twisted twisted behavior, across the board. And yeah, to a child, that is really confusing, because it's like, well, this person wasn't hurtful or hateful all of the time. It was just when they were abusing me. But the reality is, when you've got a person that's doing such heinous, horrific acts, everything that they do is abusive. Being nice is abusive, because being nice it's also, it's getting the victim to lower their guard. It's getting the victim to forgive them. It's getting the victim to trust them. It's never 100% an act of kindness or anything. It's everything that they're doing is kind of spinning this web to allow them to continue to abuse the other person. And that's what can make it so confusing. I think it was Oprah had mentioned this, like with the Michael Jackson case. And anyways, when she had the two guys on that had made the movie, she'd made the comment. She's like, because she was sexually abused as a child. And she said that's something that most people don't understand, is when it's not just the act itself of being sexually abused, it's that the abusive person they cultivate a whole relationship with you. And it messes with a person's mind at a very deep level, because there are these two sides to them. They're doing something really good, and then they're doing something really bad. And it's part of the abuse. Kenneth says, my problem is that I tend to have delayed anger. I get angry about something later, not immediately. Is this common? It can be. It can be. And not just with anger, but delayed emotions in general, delayed fear, delayed anxiety. We can talk about this a little bit. I guess I'll just kind of keep it vague, but somebody had mentioned the other day about they had seen their ex. They felt like they were reasonably kind of cool, calm, and collected. They were making jokes, kind of a non-issue. And then later, they realized that they were close to having a panic attack, and they couldn't figure out why. And then they started to think, a friend of theirs had mentioned, well, maybe it's because you saw your ex. And they realized, oh my gosh, could it possibly be that this, and, could I be triggered and not know it, kind of a thing, which, yes, that can absolutely happen. When we're trying to suppress certain emotions, or we're even in ways where we think we're doing something that's beneficial, like self-soothing. So we start feeling our anxiety rise, and we're trying to push it down, or we're trying to deny that we're feeling this way, or we're starting to feel angry, and we're talking ourselves out of it. Basically, we're not giving time to acknowledge that emotion before we're processing it. Then the result of that is we tend to be very we struggle to know how we really feel, because we're so used to kind of bypassing these emotions. So yeah, it's interesting. So yeah, the anger is a very common emotion. Anger, anxiety, fear, sadness are often can be very delayed for people, because we're not taught how to handle these emotions. We're not taught even how to feel these emotions. And so then that's interesting too, when you get wires that are crossed and somebody's sad, but it's coming out as they're mad, or they're mad, then that emotion's coming out as sadness, and they're crying a lot. Or they're afraid, but it comes across as sadness. The human brain is fascinating, and there's so much about it that we just don't know, you know? So I think the important thing is to actually, let me back up a little bit with the delayed anger. My guess would be that it's very common, especially when people are first getting in tune with where their boundaries are and knowing when they're being crossed. So, because again, if so many of us are like, oh, I'm go with the flow, I don't care, whatever, like everything's fine with me, I have no opinion, I have no wants, I have no needs, I'm totally fine. And then we start realizing, oh, actually, no, I do have wants and needs, and I do have opinions, and there's certain things that, I'm not okay with. It's weird when you start realizing, oh my gosh, um, I've been silencing all of this for so long for whatever reason, generally because that's we've been encouraged to silence that because of a controlling parent or a controlling partner. Um, so when we first start getting in tune with our boundaries, it tends to be those emotions that surface first of we feel irritated, we feel frustrated, we're just upset. And we might kind of shake it off or talk ourselves out of it or not identify why. We think, oh, it's just because my blood sugar is low. I just need to eat. But really, it might be because I don't know, some you got a phone call from a person you hadn't heard from in a long time, or that you were upset. Whatever. So kind of realizing, okay, this is why I really feel this way. This is where this emotion came from. And it shortens the gap. So we might not realize that a boundary has been crossed for sometimes, it could be months afterwards. That the time between boundary violation and boundary correction does get shorter and shorter with time and practice. And this is where giving ourselves compassion and grace comes into play, because it's just all part of the learning curve with this. We all go through it. It's not just you, we all go through it. So knowing that, and you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize this boundary was even there. I didn't realize it was crossed. It took me 6 months or 6 years to realize that was actually not okay with me. And I kept trying to talk myself into being okay because my religion told me that was the right thing to do, or my friends were telling me this was the right thing to do, or messages I got growing up told me that this was the right thing to do, and so I thought I was in the wrong. So I'm trying to make myself do this thing that I really wasn't okay with. And now I realize, yeah, it's a boundary violation, and I needed to go about it differently. To be like, well, you know what? You did what any of us are going to do. And that is to make the best decision you can based on the level of insight and information that you have at the time. That's where compassion comes into play, because it's hard. It's a hard way to live life if we're living it through hindsight, and we're just berating ourselves, chastising ourselves for not doing better. Well, like if they say hindsight's 20/20 for a reason, right? Because then you have all of the benefit of the information of the future. So we can't look back with hindsight on our life, because of course you're going to see things so much more clearly. We have to look at it with what things were going on at that time, and just be loving to yourself. You did what you did the best you could with the insight and the information that you had at the time. So let's see here. Let me scroll. Kenneth says, if I have a delayed response like this with my wife, she'll say, well, bring it up immediately or not at all. Well, if it only worked that way for all of us, and it doesn't. That's the thing, is you're not choosing to not bring it up right away. We're only able to bring up issues once we're fully aware that they are in fact an issue, especially given your past. So people that have been abused, the way that they perceive events, there's so many differences there. And so I think we can all understand, oh yeah, of course, on the surface, right, that makes absolute sense. If there's an issue, bring it up sooner than later so it can be handled. Whoever is holding on to this issue and not saying anything for months or years, the only reason a person would do that is because either they're not aware of that they're suppressing this issue, or they are consciously aware that they're suppressing this issue and they're trying to avoid confrontation. So, but either way, whoever's holding on, if you're holding on to this issue that's unresolved, you're the one that's carrying the burden, So it's not like it benefits you to hold on to this issue and not bring it up. So yeah, that's frustrating. And it's hard because if she doesn't see that of, that you're okay, whatever it might be, I'm not comfortable. There's emotions that I really struggle being in tune with. And sometimes it takes me a while to realize that something is in fact an issue because I struggle with confrontation, or if I bring up an issue with you, it's not because I'm looking for a fight or that I'm, any of this, it's because it's still unresolved with me. And it's because I love you and I care about you and I want to resolve this. That's why I'm bringing it up. If I didn't care about you or our relationship, I wouldn't bring it up because it wouldn't matter to me, but it matters to me. So I'd like for us, I'd like to talk about it. It's a challenge because there's, you have to have the kind of partner that's able and willing to have that open, honest, sincere, solutions-oriented communication. And I don't know to what degree she does or doesn't have that. Let's see here. Let me scroll. Jennifer saying she has PTSD dreams, but that usually just happens if something triggers them. So like the day that she got a birthday card from her dad. And she says, and it's weird because I expect a card since he sends one every year for my birthday and Christmas. And it's been going on for years and years now. So you'd think I'd be over these PTSD dream things. Yeah, I guess it doesn't surprise me because it's twice a year. And that's, if we're looking at it from more of like an exposure, and I don't even, guys, I have a hard time even kind of comparing these two things because they're so different. But the level of trauma that would be associated with repeated exposure. Okay, let's go take it from that approach. From repeated exposure for a person sending cards on a regular basis, because of the frequency, it would decrease that PTSD response. But because it's only twice a year, my guess is that's why. Don't get me wrong, I'm for sure not saying to have more contact or whatever. I'm just saying that because it's twice a year, even though you're expecting it, it still comes as a shock because it's not a more regular thing. Does that make sense? Yes, Kenneth, I will check my email when I get a chance. He says, I gotta go. I hope I contributed to the conversation tonight. Yes, you absolutely did. And thank you to the rest of you who have contributed to the conversation. I know, every now and again we get new people into the chat, or people that don't feel comfortable jumping into the chat, which I think we all understand. And because they're concerned, they don't want to dominate the chat, or they're not comfortable reaching out for support, or um, and it's the feeling of, oh, well, other people need it more than me. That's a lot of what can be kind of going through their mind. And so it's just, thank you guys so much for everything that you do in the chat, and for supporting new people, and for making it, especially admins. You guys do such a wonderful job of making this chat as safe and as comfortable as possible. And I appreciate it. I know the other members appreciate it, and it can mean an ocean of difference, especially for new members who might be reaching out for help for the very first time. So thank you for all that you guys do. So yes, Jennifer says, hey Dana, did you do a book club on the Pete Walker Complex PTSD book? I did. I actually did. I want to say, I think it's the only book club book I've done twice. I'm pretty sure we've covered it twice. Either that, or I'm thinking of The Body Keeps the Score. Yes, but if you go into my YouTube channel and you look on like playlists, I guess, for book club, it should be on there for the Pete Walker book club one. Yeah, it's a great, that book is so good. There's so much in there. So much in there. So, okay, guys. Well, with that said, I'm going to sign off. I will see you next week. I hope you all have a wonderful week. And oh, thank you, Bricks and Feathers. Oh, yes, I need to respond. You sent me an email. Now that I'm thinking about it, it had to do with borderline personality disorder and how it can manifest in men, if I remember correctly. And I needed to dive into that. I think that's fantastic. I'm really looking forward to that. So, okay, guys, have a wonderful evening. Have a wonderful week. As always, you are not alone. You are not crazy, and you really can move forward and heal from this. So take care. Be extra good to yourself. Give yourself that grace and compassion that you would give to anybody else. And just, again, you don't have to earn being treated with dignity and respect. Basic human right. Basic human right. Okay. Good night, guys.